Good morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where today, in the United States at least, is actually a national holiday. All offices are closed, but I came in because I had to review Sherlock. Season 4 debuted last night, and what do you know? 2017 is kicking off with a bang because I actually have enough stories for a Morning Movie News. So Beyond the Trailer will return in full swing tomorrow in terms of content, but I'm very pleased to be able to start 2017 off right with this show and getting an episode up right away. All right, so these three stories and the viewer question even are doozies. All right, so the first one, you guys sent this to me last night. It debuted in an article, well, it was a really small tidbit in The Guardian, in an interview with Ben Affleck about Live by Night and the sacrifices. It's mirroring the idea for the movie, the sacrifices his character makes to live the American dream during Prohibition as a gangster, and also the sacrifices that Ben Affleck has made as a movie star. And he has had a very tumultuous time, but I think he's at the top of his game, although he certainly does seem to be stuck in the middle of quite the Hollywood storm as Batfleck. But anyway, one little throwaway line in the interview has blown up thanks to The Hollywood Reporter, which during a slow news week, although this is a big story, made it a big headline. And that's that the headline they ran was Ben Affleck hedges on directing The Batman. And it's like, what? So specifically what he said was, I'd like to direct The Batman. The script's coming together, but if it doesn't come together in a way that I feel comfortable with, I'm not going to do it. Now, that's like... It's like almost as if when it comes to the DCEU over at Warner Brothers, if they didn't have bad luck, they wouldn't have no luck at all, right? I mean, that's just absolutely shocking. And I think that if this Ben Affleck Batman movie were to fall through, I don't really know how the DCEU could survive. It would just be so embarrassing. And I think that he is the sole individual lending any real artistic credibility to this effort at this point, right? I liked what Zack Snyder did, but, Warner Brothers is so pleased with Ben Affleck creatively that he's been made an executive producer on Justice League, and they're fast-tracking this Batman solo film. So the exact quote that the exact quote is, if it doesn't come together, I'm not going to do it. And I don't know quite when the Guardian interview took place, because it's the holidays. It ran now, but this could have been a month ago. And so the question is, why would Ben Affleck say that? Is he having a problem? We know that Warner Brothers is very, very meddlesome in the way these movies turn out. They have very strong opinions, as they should, considering how important this is to their bottom line, and also how much money they're investing in it. But at the end of the day, I think they also need to be like, well, are my contributions good? Or maybe we should find someone else to represent the studio, Warner Brothers, who maybe has a little bit better input than the people who are giving input now, right? So that might be a negotiation tactic, that maybe Ben Affleck is having some problems with the writing and arguments over the script, and so he's using this public comment to put some pressure on Warner Brothers to leave him the heck alone, right? And they should. Again, if the Ben Affleck Batman movie doesn't move forward, I think that would just be devastating for not only the brand and the franchise, but also for the fans, because this is something that we're really looking forward to, and it is like is the gleaming city on a hill when you look at the future DCEU films. I think everybody's like, but we have that Ben Affleck solo movie coming up, so let's see how that turns out. So if that were to disappear from the schedule, and also if he were to refuse to direct that, how would they move forward with him at all? It would be so awkward. I think he's right to negotiate this way publicly, because I think he certainly has the leverage. But I'm curious, what do you think of this? What do you think of the developing situation at Warner Brothers and their DC properties? What do you think? Can you believe that I can't believe that Ben Affleck would have any problem whatsoever at this point with them, considering how important he is. And how would you feel if a Ben Affleck Batman movie did indeed not move forward? They've been saying that it's coming up very soon. Joe Manganiello is dropping a bunch of hints for it. Although I'd have to say, it's funny to think that Ben Affleck will be working with Joe Manganiello. There's such a discord in terms of reputation. And also, I'd be like, hey, Joe Manganiello, if anyone's going to talk up the Batman, it should really be Ben Affleck or maybe Jeff Johns, right? Just be happy you're in it. I think there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, even when it comes to talking about these things in the press. Even with, recently Dwayne Johnson and Henry Cavill promoting liquor with their DC characters. They got to clamp that crap down and make sure that everybody's doing what's best for the brand. So it's really it's a big mess over there. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second one is that the Mean Girls musical is moving forward very quickly, and it's actually gelling, and it's going to hit the stage in Washington, D.C. in fall 2017. And if it does well there, it'll make the jump to Broadway. Now, this is very interesting. Mean Girls, of course, is become quite, it was a big hit when it was released, actually, but over the years, it's become even more legendary, right? Everyone's always like there's like Mean Girls Day, I think, and people are always quoting the movie. Like, you guys still are always like, stop trying to make so-and-so happen. It's not going to happen. Well, that's from Mean Girls, right? And also, everyone's always talking about a potential sequel. It's a big deal movie. And I think that Tina Fey, who wrote Mean Girls and has a small role in it as a teacher, I think that Tina Fey probably looks at the success that Elizabeth Banks has had with Pitch Perfect and goes, why not me? Why not Mean Girls? And I think that makes total sense. If I were a studio executive and Tina Fey walked into my office and said, why don't we do Mean Girls the musical to piggyback onto the Pitch Perfect craze, I'd be like, let's do it. And especially if they can have a successful theatrical run, even better. I mean, make no mistake, the idea is, I think, eventually to get to a movie. Or maybe like a live performance on one of the networks, but, to get this as big as it can possibly go. So Tina Fey, and Tina Fey's an interesting situation. Tina Fey really wants to jump to movies. I remember doing an interview with her when she did Admission, and she said, I really am tired of having to write all my own stuff. I'd love to be able to perform and act in other people's movies, other people's scripts, and that's the ideal because you can make more content that way. If you have to write it and produce it yourself, you can really only do maybe one movie a year or every year and a half. But if she can be in other people's movies, she can do 2 movies a year. She really wants to be in film. She turned down, I think Lorne Michaels offered her either the Tonight Show or the Late Show to host it. She would have been the first female host in the late night, Joan Rivers. Whoopi Goldberg, they've substitute hosted, but have her own show. Samantha Bee, of course, is making major inroads now. But that would have been huge for Tina Fey, and it would have made her iconic. But that's how badly she wants to be in movies. She turned that down. I wouldn't have turned that down. She should have taken it. It would have been so incredible, not only historic, but incredibly lucrative. And I think she would have done a great job with it. But anyway, she really wants to be in movies. And I guess, the acting thing isn't working out so well for her. She's, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, total failure at the box office. And so she's at least saying, okay, maybe I can produce and, keep things going behind the scenes. And she also does Kimmy Schmidt with her husband, Jeff Richmond, who she met doing improv in Chicago, I believe, over on Netflix. But the lead actress on there, she just had a baby. So the Tina Fey and her husband were able to make Mean Girls the musical over the summer. So they put it together. Her husband did compose the music. Nell Benjamin is the lyricist. And Casey Nicholaw, who's a pretty well-known director, directed the Book of Mormon, for instance, on Broadway, will be directing it. But I think they haven't cast it yet, and I think that's going to be the next big domino that needs to fall. And I think they're probably going to want to get some kind of a name talent, or at least a theatrical name talent, to probably do the Rachel McAdams role. That's going to be the big role that everybody wants. I know Lindsay Lohan was supposed to be the star, but I think as time has gone by, Regina George is the big role, the leader of the Plastics. So I'll be curious to see how this shapes up. They really wanted to kind of be like Legally Blonde, the musical, which did, I think pretty well on Broadway. It wasn't huge, but it was good. But I think Mean Girls, if I were to guess, I think Mean Girls the musical is going for Pitch Perfect, success. So good for Tina Fey, good for her to keep working. And maybe I wonder if she regrets turning down that late night hosting gig. Then anyway, for the third story of the day, speaking of strong women behind the camera and in front of the camera in Hollywood, of course, as we all know, Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds tragically passed away over the holiday, with Carrie Fisher's passing away on December 27th, and then just so heartbreakingly, her mother the very next day, and as Todd Fisher, Debbie Reynolds' son and Carrie Fisher's brother, revealed, to actually, Debbie Reynolds' intention was to go keep Carrie company. So, it's heartbreakingly sad. But not only can you watch Postcards from the Edge, which I think is fascinating and and even more tragic in light of what actually happened later on down the line. That's supposed to be, loosely based on Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds' relationship. But the the documentary that they just made, which is a biography of the two of them and their relationship, currently has been moved up at HBO. They had not set an air date yet, but it was supposed to be much later in the year. It had just done a couple of stops on the festival circuit. And there are actually some interviews with Carrie Fisher being interviewed with Fisher Stevens, who's one of the directors, along with Alexis Bloom of the documentary. But HBO has moved that up very quickly, and I wanted you to know so you could mark your calendars. I'm going to watch. I think a lot of people are going to watch. And that documentary is going to air on January 7th, which is this coming Saturday at 8 p.m. So you should definitely check that out. And it's going to, again, focus on the relationship of Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds right before their tragic passing. So that's the third story of the day. Now, finally, the viewer question comes from Wanda Maximoff. Wanda Maximoff on Twitter. And I think this is a great viewer question. So Wanda says, hopeful viewer question. I've noticed something odd. Wanda did a screen grab. That's how they could ask such a long question on Twitter. So I've noticed something odd. I recently watched all your videos about Age of Ultron from 2015, and everything was so much different. Critic reviews weren't as harsh. And I think what Wanda is saying is it was a simpler time, all right? There wasn't so much negativity and criticism of comic book movies. What changed in 2016 that these movies are now under such harsh reviews and aren't appreciated for what they are anymore and are instead taken way too seriously? Greetings from Canada. Well, Wanda, I think it is a perfect storm of a couple of different things. Well, first of all, I think that movie reviewers have realized that these are here to stay. It used to be, and not only here to stay, but are dominating the movie landscape. Like it used to be, okay, in the summer, some comic book movies will come out, right? Or some blockbusters. But now, these things, they come out all year round, and they soak up all the budget that the studios have, and they soak up all the advertising and all the release dates, and it's really hard for any other movies to get some breathing room and to find an audience. So I think that's a problem. So I think that a lot of critics, are like, I'm going to try and put a stop to this, especially when they feel that a lot of the movies don't deserve that kind of attention. They don't feel they're the high enough caliber. Speaking of high caliber, a lot higher caliber talent is now involved, and so that's also going to raise the expectations from the critics, right? It's not just some B or C level actors having fun. It's often Oscar-nominated or Oscar-winning talent, and there's just so much riding on these films, and the films have higher aspirations themselves. So of course, they want to be seen as highbrow and having good creative aspects to them. So that also is a problem. But then also, Marvel fans have dominated the space through the MCU for quite some time. And I think that when DC came on board as a potential threat, it became a little bit like sports or politics, where you couldn't like both. You had to like one or the other. And a lot of Marvel fans saw the DC incursion and the very strong support from the DC fan base as a threat. For instance, I remember people writing, like, I just don't know how I'm going to feel if Batman v Superman has better reviews than Captain America Civil War, or does better at the box office. People are saying, I just can't. I can't live in a world. I can't imagine a world where that's the case, right? And so that not only creates chatter itself, but, in a click, and it's the same thing that happened a little bit to cable news, when they're reliant on ratings. It becomes who's the cart and who's the horse, right? And I think that ideally you should have a good balance, right? You want to report on what people are interested in, but at the same time, I think you have a responsibility to, not let them shape the story in a false, the false sense. So I think that you have people wanting to tear apart the DC movies. As I've said before, I think that DC hate plays really well as clickbait. And so I think you have a lot of people playing into that. And then also, I think that some people also get swept up in it themselves, or maybe some critics choose a side. So I think that that's where a lot of it has come from. I think a genuine challenger in 2016, I think higher caliber talent. I think a lot of critics feeling like I'm taking crazy pills. Like, this movie is so bad, but why did it do so well at the box office? And why do so many people still love it? I think that's maddening to a lot of critics and also just people who cover entertainment. So I think that that's what's happened, and also that this movie is threatening all the other kind of films in the space. So do I see it getting any I think the next obvious question is this going to get any better? I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. I'm excited, though, about films like Kong Skull Island, which seem like really strong artistically but are still blockbusters. I think that's very exciting. And I think in some ways, particularly, I liked Batman v Superman, as you know, but particularly with Suicide Squad, I think if the DCEU stops kind of like, in some ways, trolling everybody by putting out movies that they have to know are seriously flawed. Like, I hope Wonder Woman does a big Peacemaker, right, this year. I think it's a very important film. I think that'll go a long way to, quelling this animosity, right? And also, I would hope that eventually, Marvel, and I mean, like, you used to be able to like Marvel and DC when you were reading comics, and I don't understand where this competition has come from. So I'm hoping at some point everybody stops hating the other side and says, I liked Civil War, and I like Batman v Superman, or whatever you like. Hey, that's interesting. Let's just talk about it and be glad the comic book movies are doing so well. I hope that we can eventually evolve to that place as well. And that there can be a lot of winners at the box office. You can have more than one. And I think that that's something that we should all think about. So anyway, that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy New Year. I hope you are excited about 2017. There certainly is a lot to be excited about at the multiplex. So leave down below what you'd like to see discussed tomorrow and any questions that you might have. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.